Now we're going to bring in Dr. Lauren Wright. She's a Princeton University political scientist. And Lauren, I want to start with the DOJ order that would limit what discovery evidence Trump could share publicly about the ongoing criminal case related to false claims that the 2020 presidential election was stolen, as well as charges that the former president conspired to overturn the election. Do you think this is the right call? And won't all discovery come out and won't be made public during the trial?
Eventually, yes. And the legal aspects of this are not the area of my expertise, but I can tell you, as someone who studies Trump's public remarks very closely and has for some time now, that he might not listen to his lawyers who are saying, absolutely keep quiet about this. Do not share revelations. Do not share information that's part of the trial. You're just going to get yourself in trouble. And so what we might be likely to see is Trump defying those sorts of orders and making things even more difficult for himself. He's embraced this fight and probably will continue to do so.
Well, to that point, the federal prosecutors filed the motion on Friday night, just hours after Mr. Trump suggested on his social media platform that he would take revenge on anyone who goes after him. You know it by heart now. If you go after me, I'm coming after you. Should this type of pronouncement be written off as bluster, or could a public statement like this interfere with impeding trials as well as the current presidential race?
That's a great question. For a normal person who's not Donald Trump, or even a former president who doesn't speak this way in public typically, yes, it edges on witness tampering. Those are allegations that have been made against Trump before, intimidation of possible witnesses. And for Trump, he does not listen to those sorts of things. And so what he will probably continue to do is cast as much doubt and go as close to the line as possible, perhaps before a judge directly confronts him about those sorts of statements. If we take a big step back from this, though, Arthel, and I know you and I discuss this quite often, a lot of this type of bluster, if we can call it that, is meant to amp up Trump supporters. It's probably not going to get him the effect he imagines it is, because these are all diehard people listening to these speeches who will vote for him anyway, no matter what. And it's very, very hard to imagine, and I think the assumption is made way too often, that there are voters out there who were planning to vote for Joe Biden in the first place, but then heard Trump saying how he's a victim of the legal system and he's having all these unfair restrictions placed on him, and then somehow converting to his side. It's just not realistic, but he's probably understandably trying to energize his supporters as much as possible.
Well, the former president tells his supporters, they want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. I mean, this is all just very different, I'll say. I want to take a look at the latest ABC Ipsos poll that shows nearly 2/3 of Americans think January 6 charges against Trump are serious, including 51% who say that, I think we have this poll, if you can pop it on. Yep, there it is. 51% who said they are very serious, and then 14% who said they are somewhat serious. And then, guys, I want to take a look at a recent Reuters Ipsos poll that found 45% of Republican respondents said that they would not support Trump if he were convicted of a felony, while 52% of those same respondents said they would not support Trump if he were currently serving time in prison. So, Lauren, as a political scientist, how will these current times impact American democracy?
Well, those numbers that you just cited, Arthel, have been remarkably consistent since April. They're national averages. They are informative, especially vis-a-vis general election voters. And so, yes, Trump has to think about these sorts of things when he calculates his campaign strategy. But I'll tell you this, if Republicans rely on the Trump-centric issues and the Trump indictments as their key issue to get this man reelected, they will not be very successful. And that warning goes for Democrats, too. If their only message is that Trump behaved criminally, morally, unethically, which, as you cited, the majority of Americans do agree with most of that. They're not going to have a potent campaign message. It's just not enough.
At this At this point, though, Lauren, on the Democratic side, President Biden is the candidate, and he's not talking about it, as he doesn't want to interfere with ongoing trials and cases, I should say, against the former president. But finally, to the point you were just making, how do you assess the former president just talking about the 2020 election and all the indictments against him and how unfair and unfounded they are? How do you analyze that he's not talking about how he would improve our nation and the lives of Americans?
I mean, both candidates need to be talking about that ad nauseum, and we have evidence, by the way, from the 2022 midterms that these sorts of messages don't work. Heading into 2022, Pew Research, for example, consistently polled Americans on their top issues, 18 issues, and guess what? We're at the very bottom of that list. Investigations into Donald Trump and investigations into Joe Biden. Never mind the Hunter Biden investigations, which are probably even lower priority, even if his behavior is alienating and not relatable and seen as criminal to a lot of Americans. And so it is important to step back and realize Americans have other concerns: the economy, immigration, crime, inflation. All of these issues would be a better bet if you wanted to decide how much of the pie of your messaging should be accounted for by day-to-day issues for Americans versus investigations into the former president.
Not to mention the roads people are driving on, the airports they're showing up at, and also certainly not to dismiss that you have China and Russia having joint operations just off the coast of military operations, just off the exercises off the coast of Alaska. Lots of things to be concerned about. All right, Dr. Lauren Wright, we will keep getting your analysis and take on these very important topics. Princeton University Political Sciences, thank you very much.